concludes all operations of the emergency alert system. All stations may now resume regular programming.
For expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy.
We have a lot of things to talk about today, but to start, let's begin with the Netherlands. So we got a report last week indicating that, and I quote, "The Dutch government announced plans to buy and close up to 3,000 farms near areas deemed environmentally sensitive to comply with EU climate rules." The Netherlands stated that it would first offer one-time voluntary deals to the large nitrogen-emitting farms in hopes of reducing pollution. However, if not enough farmers accept the initial offer, the Dutch government announced that it would move towards compulsory purchases. Yeah, they're gonna force them to sell their farms. So, some background information real quick. According to a ruling by the Dutch Council of State in 2019, every new activity that emits nitrogen requires a permit, including farming. In the future, the government wants to tax nitrogen emissions to encourage quote-unquote sustainability. But is it really about sustainability? No, it is not. And this is where things get pretty crazy, because the amount of corruption surrounding this crisis is shocking. Yeah, so basically, in the Netherlands, they have a lot of farms that are right on the outskirts of the city. The plan is to combine certain parts and essentially build a little smart city, similar to the one Saudi Arabia is building. Neighboring countries want to build as well. The quote-unquote environmental regulations and the attack on their farmers have nothing to do with climate change. It's about commercial building, and it's about the construction of, and I quote, the tri-state city. A megalopolis with a population of around 45 million people extending to areas of Germany and Belgium. For this to happen, they obviously need to buy up a lot of farmland. It's the same scam all the time. Use quote-unquote environmentalism to virtue signal and gain support for projects, and then they use those government regulations to strong-arm citizens and businesses into complying. It's a racket, nothing more. And as a result, and really, this has been the result for months at this point, but people are still protesting. In this clip, you can see the protests continuing. The police there are using heavy machinery to tip over tractors with farmers inside of them. When protesters peacefully stand against the machines, the police drag them into black vans. This is shocking Chinese-style protest enforcement in a supposed Western liberal democracy. Now, I do hope they keep fighting for their cause because, I don't know how anyone is okay with the government forcing local farmers to give up their land so they can build a megacity. The left and the right should be coming together on this kind of stuff. No one should be okay with this. Anyway, their reckless pursuit of complete control will have resounding ramifications. A quote from Will Hild. "The Netherlands' war on farmers to pursue their ESG agenda serves as a stark warning. Americans should be vigilant against efforts by both government and big Wall Street firms like BlackRock pushing these same dangerous net zero carbon emission targets here in the US. It is difficult to overstate the recklessness of undermining farmers during, the greatest global food crisis in decades. This will likely exacerbate the food price inflation we are already experiencing," end of quote. And yes, that is true. However, these things are still occurring. Another food production plant has caught fire. The West Flour Mill in Kent, Ohio, on December 1st, I believe, just a few days ago. Well, yeah, it just mysteriously caught fire. And now we are well over 100 food processing plants that have caught fire or mysteriously exploded. This has been a consistent theme for, the last year and a half or so. This, in my opinion, this is not organic, nor is it just a coincidence. Okay, so I did want to throw in the Kent, Ohio food plant fire, but it kind of screwed up the flow of the video. Anyway, right before that segment, I mentioned BlackRock and their ESG schemes. And so, in that regard, well, let's just rewind. The Netherlands' war on farmers to pursue their ESG agenda serves as a stark warning. Americans should be vigilant against efforts by both government and big Wall Street firms like BlackRock pushing these same dangerous net zero carbon emission targets here in the US. Speaking of BlackRock, here's a clip of their CEO discussing how markets prefer totalitarian governments.
Uncertainty. Markets don't like uncertainty. Markets like actually totalitarian governments where you have a understanding of what's out there, and obviously the whole dimension is changing now with, as you said, a democratization of countries, and democracies are very messy, as we know in the United States. You have opinions changing back.
Now, could it be? Could it be that through their pursuit of this quote-unquote new wealth, the carbon markets, well, are they trying to form a global totalitarian government? Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing, actually. Now, these megacities, such as the one in Saudi Arabia called The Line, which we have talked about a few times, and through this tri-state project encompassing the Netherlands, Belgium, and Germany, well, we begin to get an idea of what their future will be like. I know we just talked about this in the last video, the British kids and their predictions for the future, the clip from 1966. Anyway, just a little refresher, some of their predictions included things like this.
I don't think there is going to be atomic warfare, but I think that there is going to be all this automation. People are going to be out of work and a great population. I think something has to be done about it. If I wasn't a biologist, that's what I'd like to do something about the population problem. Try and sort of temper it somehow. I don't know how.
I think it'll be very dull, and people would all be squashed together so much there won't be any fun or anything. And people will be rationed to the amount of things they can have, because if they had too many things, it would just squash their houses, and there just wouldn't be room for them.
You will own nothing, and you will be happy.
I think it'll be people will be regarded more as statistics than as actual people.
No, I don't think I'll still be on Earth. I think I'll be under the sea. I think the population will have gone up so much that either everyone will be living in sort of big domes on the Sahara, or they'll be undersea.
For too long, humanity has existed within dysfunctional and polluted cities that ignore nature. Now, a revolution in civilization is taking place. Imagine a traditional city and consolidating its footprint, designing to protect and enhance nature. The Line will be home to 9 million residents and will be built with a footprint of just 34 square kilometers. And we are designing it to provide a healthier, more sustainable quality of life. The Line's communities are organized in 3 dimensions. Residents have access to all their daily needs within 5-minute walk neighborhoods. And the Line's infrastructure makes it possible to travel end to end in 20 minutes with no need for cars, resulting in 0 carbon emissions.
They will set aside parts of the country solely for recreation and have large blocks of built-up areas. And I think these are going to be very ugly indeed, probably.
Yeah, that sounds about right. They legit have plans to block off massive amounts of land for quote-unquote federal use. This is the plan, which is detailed in the Rockefeller document America 2050, the US plan for the next half-century, where they detail getting rid of private property and corralling the population into quote-unquote mega regions. Well, yeah, this is the plan for the entire world. So as stated, we have the Line in Saudi Arabia, the Tri-State Project in Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands, and the mega regions in the US. However, the World Economic Forum also released this video about the future megalopolis. Not a future I want to live in. But anyway, let's move on. Now the pushback on the Great Reset is picking up steam, thankfully. We are seeing pushback from citizens in a few states as well. And I quote, "The state of Florida removes $2 billion from BlackRock in anti-ESG divestment." And I quote, "Using our cash to fund BlackRock's social engineering project isn't something Florida ever signed up for." End of quote. Now how crazy is that? I'm really glad they said that. Social engineering project. Because that's exactly what it is. Anyway, something seems to be happening. With pushback like this and with Twitter allowing people to speak freely, well, at the very least, more so than before, well, I kinda think the global tyrants are getting a little worried about their future plans. So, Klaus Schwab was spotted in DC at the Astoria Hotel, I believe. Interestingly, at the same time, Macron, as you might remember from the last video, well, he recently claimed that we need a single global order.
Are you on the US or the Chinese side? Because now, progressively, a lot of people would like to see there are two orders in this world. This is a huge mistake, even for both the US and China. We need a single global order.
And well, he was visiting with corrupt Washington, D.C. cronies as well. On top of that, Tim Cook was also in D.C., meeting with those same cronies, more than likely over his spat with Elon Musk, and of course his collusion and basically them working directly with the Chinese government to persecute and target protesters. Yes, Apple was deleting footage of the protest in China in real time, and restricted the airdrop access to all Chinese citizens. These people know no shame. It is truly, truly incredible how soulless these people are. It's also a perfect example of why we cannot allow big tech to merge with government. Across the world, they will be manipulating and restricting information if it is deemed as dangerous to their plans. Again, no one should be okay with this. And I quote, "The company's recent efforts to aid China's communist regime in quashing dissent and putting down a peaceful anti-lockdown movement have prompted some to suggest that Apple takes its marching orders directly from a genocidal foreign power." Hours after Florida Governor Ron DeSantis suggested that Apple is serving basically as a vessel for the Chinese Communist Party, well, Fox News' Tucker Carlson took to the airwaves to excoriate the California-based tech giant, suggesting that, and I quote again, "Apple's loyalty is to the government of China." I mean, really, where's the lie? That seems to be the case for most politicians and corporations these days. The power that these tech companies wield is exemplified by Apple's concessions to the authoritarian Chinese state. They want to do this here. They want to wield this power over information, all as a means of maintaining their control. For example, we have the Journalism Competition and Preservation Act, a bill that would allow corporate media companies to band together in a cartel to collude with big tech companies like Facebook and Google. Well, what could go wrong with that, huh? Well, anyway, they are mounting a last-ditch effort to pass the bill before Republicans take control of the House of Representatives next year, including the undemocratic possibility of adding this so-called Journalism Act to the so-called must-pass bill like defense spending. Controlling information and making sure people cannot counter their lies is akin to national defense spending. That is not a good way to look at it. I mean, essentially that means a military-style censorship campaign lies in our future. Making that comparison is very, very dangerous. Crucially, a new version of this bill set to be introduced to the House of Representatives includes a massive loophole allowing the corporate legacy media cartel to collude with tech companies on censoring their competitors, in addition to the financial handouts from big tech companies to big media corporations that supporters of the bill somehow consider to be its #1 selling point. Yes, you will not be surprised to hear that the only way they accomplish this reset of the world is by censoring, controlling information, and controlling the population. The reason being is simply, well, their plan is insane. It makes no sense and it subjugates the world to their whim. Anyone with a brain can clearly see that this is not the path to go down, hence the censorship. I believe the plan is just to keep everyone in the dark so they can get to the point of no return. And that's because if everyone in the world realized the extent of their plan, well, I truly believe that no one would want anything to do with this future vision. Now, okay, we still have one more story on media manipulation, and then we'll talk about transhumanism for a moment. So, as it turns out, the government has paid $5 million to journalists to create software that identifies quote-unquote misinformation. And the whole point is to identify misinformation in people's friends' social media posts. And then the software asks them to copy and paste replies that push quote-unquote authoritative information using templates that exploit psychology. So yeah, let me just reiterate that real quick. the federal government has awarded $5 million to a group to develop software that will encourage regular Americans to confront their friends over quote-unquote harmful posts and correct misinformation. And how they do this is by replying with text that is suggested by the software. That's a key point right there. Replies that are generated by the software. That's NPC mentality to the max. I don't know. Now, in regards to this, the list of news organizations and their categories clearly show an inherent bias. They have organizations like the New York Times, Washington Post, The Guardian, and The Atlantic, all marked quote-unquote reliable. That is despite repeated lies and false stories. However, websites from the right, including the Daily Wire, the Daily Mail, the Epoch Times, and the Federalist, well, they're all classified as either unreliable or conspiracy. How crazy is that? Yes, so users are encouraged to paste in their friends' Twitter and Facebook posts, and the tool will tell them how harmful they are. Then it suggests relevant responses through tailored response examples or templates. And they just want people to copy and paste the authoritative information. This is insane. This is crazy. The project material suggests that it's a common view that journalists should help enforce that others only echo quote-unquote authoritative guidance from governmental and quasi-governmental bodies like the World Health Organization, which happens to serve as an advisor on the project. The group also indicates that the vaccine issue is just a pilot project for using the software on other topics. And a quote from Curtis Hoke. They want to remove dissenting views from the internet and leave the rest in a state of reprogramming. For a profession that's allegedly taught to oppose a herd mentality, they sure seem hell-bent on creating manufactured consensus. The NSF, for its part, is acting like a weapon to be wielded against the American people, end of quote. And I cannot disagree with that at all. I mean, isn't it so weird to see all of these journalists advocating for censorship and the end of free speech? It's clown world, man. However, because of their lies, their monetary flow is taking a hit. They cannot compete with independent journalists and content creators. So they need to put a stop to them, making only available information coming from them, authoritative sources. And one of the biggest draws is the fact that if people find out what they really believe, what their real plans are, then people will reject it. They must keep you in the dark. That's the goal. The bubble that these people live in is so encompassing that they have become delusional. Going against free speech is the antithesis to their entire profession. And they don't seem to realize that the only ones agreeing with their authoritarian nature are other delusional people. The majority do not believe them, they don't agree with them, and they see how destructive their ideology is. But on top of that, I cannot believe how many grown adults are asking for the government to regulate speech because they can't seem to handle mean words. It's hard to believe this is our reality. Now, I do have a lot more to say, but I try my best to avoid profanity-laced rants. But I do have some choice words for them that I won't relay to you. I mean, it's hard for me to exemplify the contempt I have for these weak people. Oh yeah, and we have one more actually. Google showcases new info interventions informed by behavioral science to build resilience to online harms. Yes, behavioral modification. My God. One approach is quote-unquote pre-bunking misinformation to quote-unquote immunize users. Yes, they are using those terms deliberately. They want to inoculate the masses of the terrible virus that is truth. Now, before we get into the main topic, I just want to highlight two stories that are pretty strange. Okay, so Biden rented some cars for his entire family over Thanksgiving, I believe. And I quote, President Biden's rented Secret Service vehicles burst into flames in a parking lot on Monday. And this happens to be just one day after he left his Nantucket vacation. Now, is it just me, or is it kind of weird that this is not a bigger story? Now, it could just be that it's nothing. It could just be that one of the cars is an electric car and the battery blew up. Well, that would be bad for their green narrative. So that could be one reason why it's not getting coverage. However, could it be something more though? I don't know. Lots of possibilities. Just a strange coincidence. The day after they left, the cars caught fire. Okay. Now for this story, this one really intrigued me because we have seen this before. And I quote, in typical Groundhog Day fashion, the Pentagon has failed yet another audit. Yet for the most part, nobody seems to care in the media or the government. When you fail year after year, it becomes the rule versus the exception to fail basic standards. This recent failure marks the 5th year that the Defense Department has failed to meet the audit requirements set by Congress. So how bad was it? Well, if you ask the lead money man at the Pentagon, well, he's gonna say it wasn't that bad. I mean, it's only a couple $1 trillion. Yeah, they lost a couple $1 trillion. Now, of the 27 agencies audited within the Department of Defense, only 7 received a passing grade. To put some dollar amounts to that, only 39% of the $3.5 trillion in assets are accounted for, leaving a deficit of about $2.2 trillion in assets unaccounted for. Yes, and this is what I really want to get to. For those with a long memory, everyone may recall a very interesting press conference on September 10th, 2001, when Rumsfeld said the Pentagon couldn't account for $2.3 trillion. Now, we all know what happened next. So, who are the actual benefactors of the Pentagon's gross financial negligence? Now, in order to find out, one merely has to look at the military-industrial complex. Now, I have a few questions. How much money do they take every budget cycle? Nothing would surprise me at this point. With Agenda 2030 and the Great Reset, they are going to need a lot of money to make this transition. So my guess would be that $2.2 trillion is going towards that, illegally. Anyway, let's talk about transhumanism for a moment. So we had some updates regarding Neuralink. They are moving to human trials within 6 months, I believe, and showed a few updated clips from their project. For example, in this video here, a Neuralink trained monkey doing telepathic typing using just his mind. However, that's not all. There are some good benefits before we get into the disturbing aspects. So yeah, they say they will make the blind see. They will make the handicapped walk again. While this would be the most incredible medical breakthrough in history, my question, and a lot of people's question, is how can we be sure this tech will not be weaponized and used against humanity to enslave us all? And well, there is no guarantee. So on the screen playing right now is a clip of various cover shoots promoting transhumanism. This has been a part of the plan for a long time. Now, okay, we have talked about the history of transhumanism quite a bit on this channel, everything from Julian Huxley to the origins of cybernetics. However, I don't think people realize how big this is. Yes, I believe we're at a moment in time where the future of the human species will be decided. Implementing brain chips, merging man with machine is a fork in the road. You know, evolutionary speaking. We can go down either path. We can be like this chick.
We're going to start the When Humans Become Cyborg session. You know, I always want to be a cyborg. I'm waiting for the day to become one, but let's see. Like today, we like to really talk about the recent developments of brain-computer interface and how that's really blurring the line between man and machine. You know, I always want to be a cyborg. I'm waiting for the day to become one.
Or we could remain based humans. Once we choose that path we go down collectively, I fear that's it. Yes, they call it Humanity 2.0. The idea being that once humans upgrade their capabilities, Humanity 2.0 is going to be much better than Humanity 1.0 in basically every facet. So basically, everyone will join the transhumanist movement in order to compete on a day-to-day basis. At least, that's what they believe. And this actually goes back to a concept we talked about a few months ago, technological accelerationism. Lots of people believe that this is inevitable. As Elon Musk says, if you can't beat them, join them. And, nah, I think I'll pass. However, the possibility of this tech being used for nefarious reasons is, well, innumerable. With all the stories we detailed relating to Google wanting to quote-unquote immunize the world of misinformation, the censorship trend, the media colluding with big tech, and of course the government merging with big tech to counter alternative viewpoints to medical issues. Well, I mean, come on. It's not exactly a leap of the imagination to conclude that the government is going to directly censor, manipulate, or implant thoughts related to compliance with government initiatives. I know, it sounds like a sci-fi plot, but what can I say? They openly talk about this stuff. Now, I won't play the entire clips this time because I play them quite a bit. But for example, we have this clip of Klaus Schwab talking about how they want to monitor brainwaves in real time to determine how people react to policy pitches. However, they can also examine much, much more than that. We have guys like Yuval Harari openly talking about how people are now hackable humans. They have the power to not only manipulate your consciousness in real time, but can also implant memories if they so choose to do so. And it's to the point where they are even talking about putting advertisements in dreams. Yes, that is true. Look it up. Or maybe we'll go into that in a different video. However, my point is, there are all sorts of nefarious possibilities, and really, these are just plans being discussed. And unfortunately, eventually those plans will be implemented. Now let me just ask you, is there anything going on in the world right now that elicits trust? How could anyone trust these corrupt sociopathic leaders with this much power? It's insane. It's a terrible, terrible idea. I believe they essentially want to create a drone class. They are creating a situation that will develop a digital hive mind. Free will lost forever. Freedom of thought and expression gone forever. Your consciousness bound, strung up, and left out to dry. This is a crucial moment in history. Now is the time to choose what path we take. Humanity or the new species, Homo Deus, or Humanity 2.0. Now, I talked about this in a different video, but Biden signed a transhumanist executive order, and it's just crazy. On the heels of Biden's September 12th executive order entitled the National Biotech and Biomanufacturing Initiative. Well, it's basically a complete capitulation of our government to Big Pharma, the biotech industry, and the entire transhuman cabal that wants to create Humanity 2.0 by changing our genetic structure. Now, if you take a look on the screen, you can see some data points. We are going in this direction. People have to make their voices heard, or this is going to be your future. The thing is, technocracy and transhumanism have become allies in the quest to conquer humanity, nature, and the world system in general. Underlying this is the evil philosophy of scientism, which is the worship of science, and you can see it around us constantly. This mechanistic thinking treats humans on the same level as animals, insects, or even trees in the forest. Thus, these new quote-unquote intelligent designers have no problem in applying their science to change you and the world around you. So basically, the World Economic Forum promotes the Great Reset in two parts: technocracy, that transforms society, economics, and politics, and then we have transhumanism, that creates Humanity Plus, or Humanity 2.0. This is the heartbeat of Klaus Schwab's Fourth Industrial Revolution, immortal gods living in perpetual utopia. However, as we all know, they won't have utopia, it will be a dystopia. And really, we should all have a mantra. If the World Economic Forum thinks something is a good idea, well, we should do the opposite. And on top of all the craziness, there's a lot of ethical questions we need to ask. Yes, the limits on implants are going to be set by ethical arguments rather than scientific capacity. For example, should you implant a tracking chip in your child? There are solid, rational reasons for it, like safety. But would you actually do it? Is it a bridge too far? Of course, and really, the rational argument is always pitched as the same thing. Quote unquote, it's for your safety. And well, it was for our safety the last 2 years when we saw a subclass of people created and locked out of society. Of course, destroying our human and civil rights was all about our safety. This idea, safety, this is what blinds society to the dangers of a technocratic world. So, let us ask one question of the transhumanists at the World Economic Forum. What happens when the Chinese social credit system, which of course we know is digital identity, a World Economic Forum project now legalized in most countries, including Australia? Well, with this technology in play, how long before the government decides to use that tracking chip against citizens who haven't done their part for quote-unquote climate change or global health? Well, it wouldn't take long because that's part of their plan. Exactly how quickly does a microchip become a prison? After all, the definition of slavery is being owned by the powerful. With a chip implanted in our hands, or, Neuralink grafted onto our brains, we are no longer independent creatures. These proposals for digital surveillance and implanting chips into our bodies to be connected to the Internet of Bodies, and in turn the Internet of Everything, will destroy humanity.
The features of this fourth industrial revolution is that it doesn't change what we are doing,
but it changes us.
The very idea of human being some sort of natural concept is really going to change. Up until now, the conversation we've been having is around freedom of speech. Once we can access people's thoughts and access people's emotions.
The Internet of Bodies, or IOB, is actually an ecosystem. It's a bunch of devices that are connected to the internet that contain software and that either collect personal health data about you or can alter the body's function.
We will no longer be autonomous conscious beings, and that is something that I personally cannot reconcile. So, transhumanism, the idea that human beings should undergo an intentional evolution with the help of technology towards both longevity and transformation. Well, it's a concept that rests on the idea that the human body in its current form is not the best vehicle to carry humanity into the future. Neuralink is a perfect example of that. With this device, human beings will be able to interact with data directly. Data is going to flow in two directions. Imagine a Neuralink interface between brain and mapping software like Google Maps, or between brain and a device like Siri or Alexa, or really billions of Neuralinked individuals linked in the metaverse. And I think this is a very, very important question that was proposed by Libby Emmons. Where does thought end and data begin? Will there be any way for human beings to understand the difference between their own thoughts and the data that is being fed into those thoughts? The human mind is infinite in possibility, while data, despite appearance, has its limits. Additionally, data is often created for a purpose, advertising, for example, or propaganda from politicians and leaders. Imagine an anti-misinformation or disinformation initiative such as the kind we recently saw with COVID, Ukraine, climate change, or really just take your pick on popular propaganda. However, instead of humans being able to look at all the data provided, take that data, think about it, and then express a thought, well, that data is already part of your mind, indistinguishable from thought. How exactly is a human being going to be able to weigh data and perspectives and create their own thoughts and ideas if there is no way to tell the difference between one's thoughts and the data which streams persistently from a hive mind link? We can put down our smartphones, shut down our laptops, but will there be any way to turn Neuralink off? The vision for Neuralink is that human beings can all be connected through a network of Neuralinks. Each human being will be simply another data port, another node, another input in the vastly growing Internet of Things. However, we will no longer be human. And again, that is something that I cannot reconcile. Once again, this is HelioWave. If you like the content, like, comment, and subscribe. Share the video if you want to. If you're in a position to, consider subscribing on Locals or Subscribestar. However, make sure you disobey those true fascistas and the technocrats. But of course, I do hope you have a good night.